you know, what about possibilities of doing a transplant? And we were told that in theory that's okay, but you need a heart to do a transplant, and obviously we just can't go and get one like that. So it was said that it was possible to keep Sam in possibly in a reasonable enough condition to accept a donor for another 3 days, and so basically they give themselves 3 days to find Sam a heart. We were quoted odds of something like 1,000,000 to 1. It said, you know, you really are clutching at straws.
Hi, Ita.
Good morning,
How are we doing?
We're doing okay at the moment. Adrenaline's on 0.5 and dopamine.
At the end of a few days of ECMO, with Sam now showing no signs of recovery of his heart, I had to make a decision with the rest of the team whether we should continue to run the ECMO. And we agreed with them that we would discontinue the ECMO support, fully expect him to die.
I actually found myself basically giving Sam permission to die if he'd had enough. Thinking about it now is a bit strange, that, you know, giving your son permission to die, but the way I looked at it, he was the only one that had the right to decide that.
When the machine's off, he'll be on his own, and we know that his own heart can't pump blood around. So at that stage, we'll take all this away and give him back to you to hold. So we'll do it as nicely as we can. So I'm just going to start doing that. Pump down to 3/4 flow.
As Steve and Sue stood at Sam's bedside about to say their final goodbyes, the hospital took a call that seemed to be the answer to their prayers. A donor heart had been found, but there was a snag. The heart was not in England, but in Spain.
As the machine was being weaned and turned down, a call came from UK Transplant to tell me that there was a possibility of a heart in Spain. The information given to me about the donor was that the size of the heart was suitable, the blood group was compatible, and he was the one on the list that was right at the time. It was the right organ for him.
To sat there and be told there's a heart available, do you want it? I straight away said yes. I thought, relief, total relief. I mean, the night before I was praying that his heart would work, but then the next day actually being told there's a heart was amazing. It's wonderful.
With Sam now back on life support, a team of medics began their journey to the town of Vigo in northern Spain to bring the donor heart back to Great Ormond Street.
Knowing that someone would have to die to give your child a chance of life was pretty awful. You swing from feeling guilty that you want someone to die and hope that your child will survive. It's very hard.
We tried to keep the ischemic time, which is the time that the heart is without any circulation, to a minimum. And certainly we tried to keep that under 4 hours. That's from the time that the heart has stopped beating in the donor to the time that blood is going through it again in the recipient. So the timing is crucial.
11 hours after the initial telephone call, the team was back in England with the donor heart, and Sam was rushed into theatre for his 4-hour transplant operation.
I think many of the people in the team felt that I'd lost my marbles completely, that I was being irresponsible, that using up a valuable heart, for someone whose brain wasn't functioning, potentially wasn't functioning well, and who we had no idea of what their quality of life was going to be, was not right, not ethical. But I suppose I was driven to think that he would be all right. I don't know why. Sometimes you do things which are not necessarily 100% logical. I just saw it as a chance for Sam to survive.
Sam's literally just arrived back from theatre, and obviously it's very much early days. He's obviously been extremely unstable during the long operation and so on. And as Mr. Alex explained to you the reasons behind that. And it's extremely important that we monitor him very carefully at this time.
Yeah.
Things didn't go too well after the transplant initially. He arrested, I think it was the following day, or it may have even been that night, so then there was obviously a big fight to keep him going. So obviously now we're in a similar situation that we was before. We've got his heart going in, but it don't seem to want to, you know, it just kept stopping.
By the time he'd had the transplant and was a few times he nearly died, we felt like zombies, coping with all that we'd been through, and then coping with this as well. It drains you, and you sort of, your energy, your strength runs out.
His recovery, to me, has been staggering. I'm surprised by it, but greatly relieved by it. I suppose I feel that Stephen and Sue's optimism and the encouragement they gave me to carry on with the difficult decisions has been justified.
And you a cat.
The recovery made has been phenomenal. Since taking Sam home from hospital, we've never got to the stage where we've thought, this is it, this is as far as he's going to go.
Hey, hi. How are you? Hello. Good to see you. Yeah, good to see you.
I mean, he's recovered now to being pretty much a normal 6-year-old child, apart from having to have drugs.
How are you?
He's fine.
What you got? What's that? What is it? Is it chocolate?
His life is limited.
Shall we wipe it up?
We enjoy him and make the most of him while we've got him. To pretend that he may live till he's a lot older is not being practical. Being practical is just telling yourself all the time that enjoy him while you've got him. He's got a limited life. Make it as happy and as loving as possible. I love cuddling him and kissing him and just watching him doing something and he's happy and he's smiling makes me feel wonderful.
The expression, it's gone down the wrong way, but how many of us actually understand what that means? Using a fibre optic camera, it's now possible to look inside someone's throat. Looking down Ian's airway here, you can see the vocal cords, which open and shut when he coughs, and vibrate when he speaks. This tube is the only route for air to get into the lungs. If it's damaged, or if it becomes blocked because something intended for the stomach goes down the wrong way, then breathing becomes difficult, even impossible. If you can't breathe, then you can't speak or call for help, and you have just minutes to live. That was the horrific experience of Marilyn Dover. In our reconstruction, she's played by an actress. Marilyn lives close to the beach in Dawlish, just round the corner from her daughter and her grandson Christopher.
I had come in quite late from work one evening and I was starving hungry, so I threw together some bacon and eggs and mug of tea and sat myself down in front of the television.
We think that somewhere in the region of 350 people a year die in this country as a result of obstruction of their airway.
I was eating away cheerfully, being observed by a hungry dog, and all of a sudden I involuntarily swallowed a piece of bacon. I hadn't begun to chew it, and it was stuck in my throat. So I tried to swallow, it wouldn't budge. And it was getting quite painful. So I kept consciously trying to swallow it, and it still wasn't budging. And then it suddenly dawned on me, it wasn't budging because it wasn't actually in my throat at all. It was in my windpipe. And the realization of that was horrifying. I was really frightened. But more than that, not a particle of air was going in or out of my throat.
When you have an obstruction of the airway, you can't call for help, you can't speak. This happens because of a piece of food gets caught between the vocal cords at the entrance to the breathing pathway. Not only does it get lodged, but the vocal cords actually are designed to protect the airway. They may actually grip a piece of food, and that stops it from being easily coughed out.
I tried to use the telephone, and no sound came out. Suddenly, I hadn't got a voice. My lungs wanted to go, and there was no available. And I was getting a pounding in my head, and my eyes were throbbing, and I was sweating. And at the same time, I'm trying to work out, what are you going to do?
The heart will continue to beat, but after a few minutes, the brain begins to suffer, you pass out, and eventually permanent damage could occur.
I knew that I hadn't got very long, although I did know that there was a technique where you could go behind someone and squeeze their midriff, but that was what you did to somebody else. So I worked out what I thought was a plausible method of simultaneously punching myself in the stomach, ramming my elbows to my sides, bending over double, and holding my throat as straight as I possibly could, which all sounds quite impossible. But believe me, you're motivated when it's life and death. The most likely person to find me was going to be my little grandson, Christopher, and he would find me dead, sprawled on the floor, and I couldn't let that happen. So I knew that I'd got to do this myself, and it didn't work. And I was really so frightened by now, and I decided to go and see if I could find a little vegetable knife to open my throat myself. And on the way to the kitchen, I had another go, and this time it worked.
What Marilyn did was a technique that we now call abdominal thrusts. That uses pressure on the abdomen to force the air out of the lungs. That will remove the obstruction, just like getting a cork out of the bottle.
If I had panicked, I'd be dead now. And maintaining some sort of calm is absolutely vital.
I've heard of lots of people being saved by a rescuer, having this done to them by somebody else. But for Marilyn to do that to herself shows a remarkable presence of mind, a considerable achievement.
It's something that I will never ever forget as long as I live. And I'm extremely aware that there may be a next time.
Marilyn Dover's story was so remarkable that the British Medical Journal published an account of her experience and the technique she used. As we saw, Marilyn didn't find it easy to perform abdominal thrusts on herself, but experts suggest it's possible to create more force with the thrusts by pressing your abdomen firmly over a hard, rounded object, like the back of a chair. Whether you're at home, like Marilyn, or eating in a restaurant, it's far more likely you'll need to help someone else who's choking, and knowing what to do could save their life. St John Ambulance has helped us put together this advice, but a word of warning, it's extremely dangerous to practice these procedures on a healthy person. For our information film, our actors have simulated the life-saving techniques. Most choking incidents in adults happen when food goes down the wrong way. If this occurs, encourage the person to try and cough the obstruction out. Their head should be lower than their chest, so help them to bend over, and if they can't cough, give them 5 firm back slaps. If they still can't speak or breathe, their airway is probably completely blocked and they could die within minutes. You must keep calm but act quickly and try abdominal thrusts. To do this, stand behind them and place a fist below the bottom of their breastbone and the other hand on top. Make a quick upward thrusting motion. Do 5 abdominal thrusts followed by 5 back slaps until the blockage is cleared. If the person loses consciousness, call for an ambulance immediately, and if their airway is still blocked, continue the cycle of 5 back slaps and 5 abdominal thrusts, with them lying on their back. If the blockage is ejected and the casualty starts to breathe normally, place them in the recovery position. If they're not breathing, begin the ABC of resuscitation. It's often children who are found choking not only on food, but also on small toys and other objects. For children aged between 1 and 7, put them across your lap and carry out 5 back slaps. If this fails, lay them on the floor to try chest thrusts. Using one hand, press down on the lower third of their breastbone and do 5 chest thrusts, leaving about 3 seconds between them. After this, check their mouth for the obstruction, and then, if needed, try 5 more back slaps. If this cycle doesn't work, you need to try 5 abdominal thrusts, but remember these can damage young children. Only use one hand, and about half the amount of pressure you'd use on an adult. If a baby under 1 starts choking, lay them along your forearm and give them 5 back slaps. This may be all that's needed to dislodge the blockage. Check their mouth carefully and remove any obvious obstructions with one finger. If there aren't any, then try up to 5 chest thrusts. Using the tips of 2 fingers, press on the breastbone just below the line of the nipples. If the obstruction still isn't cleared, repeat the cycle of back slaps and chest thrusts. If your baby or child becomes unconscious, it normally means they've stopped breathing. If this happens, you must dial 999 and begin breathing for them. If you know what to do and you act quickly, you could save someone's life. Remember, never do abdominal thrusts on a baby less than a year old. And don't practice any of the techniques you've just seen on a healthy person. You could seriously damage their internal organs.
When you're flying, there are basically 2 ways of getting from A to B. You can simply look out of the window using your eyes, just as if you're driving a car, or you can rely 100% on your instruments. With good visibility, either by day or by night, it's relatively simple for a pilot with even basic training to be able to spot landmarks and judge altitude and distance. But when it's cloudy, you'll be flying blind unless you've been trained to interpret the information that comes from the instruments in the cockpit. In January 1996, David Palmer and Vic Whitehead took off from their flying club in mid-Wales on what they thought would be a routine training flight. It ended up, however, as far from routine. In our reconstruction, Vic and Dave are played by actors, but we've used the actual recording of the radio calls made that night.
You get here early?
Yeah, I wanted to do the checks before I got too dark.
Dave and I met at Shopton Airfield about 6 or 7 years ago. We've known each other since and become very good friends.
Let's go. Have a good flight.
He was in the same situation as I was in that he was looking for an aircraft to buy. So we opted to buy one between us.
Here we go then. Shopton Tower, this is Oscar Romeo, requesting clearance to take off.
Myself and Vic try to go night flying as often as we can. It's probably the most exciting type of flying, you know.
Oscar Romeo, cleared for takeoff.
Thank you, Tower.
The aircraft that took off in front of us reported quite a substantial cloud ceiling, so we thought there was actually no problem. We decided that we would just do some touch-and-go landings, you know, practice landings at night. Most private pilots can only fly in the daytime. You can take an additional exam, which allows you to fly at night, which I'm able to do.
Fair bit of cloud out there.
At about 700 or 800 feet, we went into thick cloud.
Where the hell did he come from? I can't see anything.
The nice thing would have been to be able to just drop straight out of the cloud, just point the aircraft down. The problem was that we were approaching a town and we might have put ourselves and the town into a lot of danger by hurtling out of the cloud.
Request landing assistance. We're coming back in.
We turned right, which put us further into the cloud, and we also had to keep climbing, hoping that we would come back into clear air, which we didn't. Most private pilots aren't instrument trained. Most private pilots have to be able to see the ground. If you can see the ground, you can get back down to it. To our right were hills, and in front of us were hills, and some of them higher 1,300 feet, and we were only at 1,000 feet.
Stakeout, Dave.
It's like being in a darkened room. And the only voice you have is the voice of the air traffic controller who's directing you.
Oscar Romeo, turn left, heading 240.
Turning.
In a car, you can feel if you go around a corner, but in an aircraft, you don't get that sensation at all. So you can't feel if it's banked over or if it's descending.
Okay, why don't I take over from here?
Great idea. You can't fly at night.
I shouldn't fly at night because I'm colourblind, which gives me difficulty seeing the difference between red and green lights.
Sure? I'm sure. You have control. I have control.
Oscar Romeo, you're still way off your heading to land. Suggest you send a mayday. Vic and Dave realised their situation was serious.
Then had to implement Plan B, which was to call for some expert help. We would have to give a mayday call.
Mayday, mayday. This is Oscar Romeo requesting a mayday.
We call the Diversion Distress Services, which are in West Drayton.
Oscar Romeo, request your aircraft type and number of persons on board.
We'd actually just more or less come on shift, and it had the potential to be a very quiet evening.
We have a problem. We're in cloud. It's about 1,400 feet, somewhere around Hereford area. We need Shobden.
Oscar Romeo, for Shobden, set heading 275.
We were just going to point him back to Shobden, and he would get visual with the airfield, and that would be it.
We were then confronted by severe turbulence, which was throwing the aircraft about a bit like a cork on water.
Golf Oscar Romeo, if you fly the headings I tell you and report steady alternate, please.
I'm trying the best.
The wind was blowing him, and it just developed very slowly, and we suddenly realised that we might have a longer, a more severe problem than we previously thought.
We tried a couple of passes to see if we could see the ground, regain sight of the airfield.
Golf Oscar Romeo, are you visual with the ground?
Negative.
After we tried many times, we decided that they were not going to get into Shobden that evening. We had to hopefully get them in somewhere else.
Our plan is to get the search and rescue helicopter airborne to take you through cloud.
Thank you.
Hello, Plymouth.
Getting a seeking search and rescue aircraft up to help a stricken aircraft is quite rare. We don't tend to get called out for those type of events. Being an aviator hit home a bit more that there's somebody else up in the skies in trouble, and therefore we ought to see what we could do to actually assist.
We just had this vague notion that they would intercept the aircraft and escort them to an airfield, of which we didn't know the destination yet. The wind was really picking up very strongly. The weather was not going to get better wherever we sent them to.
Golf Oscar Romeo, this is Rescue Helicopter 169 on guard.
Good to hear that. Rescue 169, this is Oscar Romeo.
The helicopter actually called us, and that was a nice, that was reassuring.
We have all from Timber en route to the Shobden area.
Thank God.
ETA Shobden at 1925.
It was 47 minutes estimated time of arrival. That was really disheartening. You see on the films and the tellies that the aircraft takes off and is with you in 5 minutes and you get help. It doesn't work like that in the real world.
Golf Oscar Romeo, what is your endurance?
That means how much fuel have we got?
About an hour.
It was an estimate. Could have been 50 minutes, it could have been an hour and, 10 minutes.
Can you note down the time for me as well, please? From that point on, we activated a stopwatch to count down their fuel for them.
We should be...
We were actually thinking, well, what can we do when we get there? And we were drawing a blank. There wasn't a lot we could actually do for them, and we were aware of that all the way up.
We've got to pass...
The aircraft itself came up and said, well, we've got an hour's fuel left, which left us not much over 10 minutes to do something once we even got there.
As the RAF search and rescue helicopter rushed to their rendezvous with the plane, Vic and Dave's problems were getting worse.
Keep the lights on. I know, I went up too sharply.
We have a thing called a stall warning light, which comes on 5 miles an hour before the aircraft drops out of the sky. It means that you're at such an angle that it's just not going to fly anymore and you have to do something about it. What you have to do is push the nose down of the aircraft, get it flying again, get some speed up. The problem with getting the speed up is you're flying faster towards the ground then. You might be doing 140, 150 miles an hour downhill with the following wind and no brakes.
Thank God.
But by then you've reduced your height, so you've then got to think about climbing again. So it's like being on a helter-skelter, out of control in fog. You really don't know what's happening, but you can feel things unusual happening to you.
Made a bit of a fix here at the moment. We're heading due north. We're at 3,000 feet.
They decided we'd go to Cardiff because that was the nearest place. We hadn't been going very long in that direction, and they obviously decided we couldn't go there because of the weather.
Gloucester's a possible, that's quite close to Shobden.
And they decided on Gloucester. But on the approach, they decided we couldn't go into Gloucester. Everything seemed to be going wrong, you know, everywhere we wanted to go kept turning us away for one reason or another.
We've got Shobden here.
We were desperately trying to help them out. Shawbury. And we ended up opening up one of our other military airfields.
She turned us towards the helicopter, which is a bit like saying drive down to the ambulance that's going to meet you at your accident, you know, because it would shorten the distance.
I remember at one stage contemplating asking them over the radio whether they had any parachutes on board. We decided against it in the end because it would actually have been putting doubt in their minds that there was nothing we could do for them.
There's less cloud down here. You can actually see the channel at the moment.
Ditching them was a possibility. We were fully equipped to pick people straight up out of the water.
The helicopter reported that they could see us on radar. The indications were that they were heading straight for us.
That's a bit scary because he knows what he's doing, we don't. He had a radar which told us where we were in relation to him, we didn't.
Had you flying for flight level 60?
We couldn't fly at the same height in case we got to the same height, same place, same time, and ended up crashing into each other. So we needed at least 500 feet difference in our height. So we got them to climb. The problem with climbing to great heights is the higher you go, the stronger the wind is.
Helicopters don't like it that high. The air's very thin. Although the engines are working well for you at cool temperatures, the blades don't tend to bite much of the air, and so it was causing us handling problems in itself.
The thing I can remember very distinctly as we came through the cloud was how clear a night it was. There was, you know, wonderful twinkling stars, and the moon was there, and you know, everything was friendly.
Okay, Tip, yeah, I've got a visual now.
Yep, I can see him.
I've got him. We can see them.
Saw the helicopter. It was sheer relief. There was somebody else out there with us.
Oh, boy. Glad to see you.
He waved to us. That was a nice sight to see.
Contact with the helicopter to my extreme right.
We actually physically heard their voices alter. They must have just thought, oh, we're saved.
He asked us if we'd ever flown in formation, and we hadn't. He said something like, well, now's the time to learn.
If you think about the Red Arrows, there's 9 aircraft flying all in the same bit of airspace, all doing the same thing. We weren't expecting him to fly like that. What we wanted him to do was just to maintain a position relative to us.
Approximately 22 miles from Shawbury.
The engine gave a bit of a splutter.
The fuel, Vic, we're all empty. I'll switch tanks. Well, let's hope there's enough in that one, then.
You have a switch to turn over from one tank to another. It now meant that we were flying on our second tank, and we've only got 2. I sensed then that the RAF pilots thought we had a problem.
There's no way we're going to get into Shawbury.
It became obvious that it was not a viable option because it was so cloudy.
When you look north towards Shawbury, the cloud tops were climbing up to almost our height. When you look towards Birmingham, a little bit east from where we were, you could see the cloud tops falling away, like falling downhill from where we were. You could also see a little bit of the lighting from the city of Birmingham.
Due to the weather here, it's a lot better at Birmingham.
Birmingham?
Just confirm your endurance. I don't think we have endurance for Birmingham. I'll just say endurance this time. Okay, 30 minutes most.
We actually said to Dave and Vic, this is where we're going to go. Their reply to that was that they didn't have enough fuel to get to Birmingham. We had no choice.
Let's throw another lump of coal on and make our way towards Birmingham.
Birmingham was probably about 20 to 25 minutes transiting time, and their fuel was about the same duration.
The percentage I would have given him of getting down at that stage would have been only about 20% chance.
I got the map out, opened the map, which is like the size of the Times, fully opened.
What are you doing?
Which meant that he couldn't see the instruments. We laughed at that point, you know, because it was just so stupid, really.
Birmingham controller was very quick off the mark, and he quickly recognised that he was going to have to hold some aeroplanes out of the airport.
Oscar Romeo, this is Birmingham. We're just in fact approaching the centre line of 06.
They called us and said we're in line with the main runway.
Your information, we're about 15 miles from Birmingham, and at this speed we're going to be about 10 or 12 minutes to get there.
So there's 12 minutes left in the tank.
And then the aircraft coughed a little bit, you know, or sort of spluttered a little bit. And the slightest suggestion that it's not sounding exactly the same now as it was a couple of minutes ago is petrifying. The left-hand gauge was reading empty then.
Maybe there's a bit more in the other one.
You think the worst and you think that it's about to stop. Change back to the gauge which was already reading empty. Probably the most frightening moment of my life, actually.
If the engine had shut down because of lack of fuel, then this aircraft not only would it have cost the lives of the two pilots on board, but it could also have cost the lives on people on the ground.
We knew that the fuel situation was quite desperate at this stage, and that they were going to run out very quickly.
It'd be a pretty close thing.
The approach into Birmingham was probably one of the most stressful things I've ever heard on the frequency.
They descended through the cloud, and I continued on the height they'd asked us to fly at. And I can remember the helicopter pilot saying, "You've got to come down sometime." So we then descended into cloud.
The controller had to keep asking our height, and I said 3,800, and he said, "You need to be at 2,000 feet now." So we had the side slip, which meant we had to put full right-hand wing down. So we're now tipped on our right-hand side, one wing forward and the other one down. When we looked at the rate of descent indicator, which would normally be 350, 400 feet, it was reading 2,500 feet a minute. In fact, it came off the gauge at one time because we were dropping a tremendous rate, you know, which meant that in 2 minutes we would have been on the floor. We came hurtling out the cloud into tremendously bright lights everywhere. Vic, quite calmly about it, said something like, "You have control." And I said, "Thanks, mate." Because he didn't know which colours were in front of us. You know, you have blue lights, green lights, red lights, all sorts. The M42 next to us as well. Good old helicopter still alongside us, keeping up.
It's over to you now. I have control. Good luck.
We got to about 300 feet, and we were still going miles too fast. So the only thing we could then do was put full power on and abort the landing, which then took us towards the centre of Birmingham, 300 feet.
We'd actually come to the end of our fuel duration on the stopwatch.
Okay, you can pick any runway you like when you access land.
Controller said to us, "You can have where you want." I think he said we could have taxiways, runways, we could have anything, you know. And I saw this huge, huge runway in front of us with massive lights on the approach. And the controller then said, "It's got a 15-knot tailwind," which means the wind's now behind you, and you never take off or land with the wind behind you. We had to land it at 90 miles an hour, which is extremely fast, you know. Not the done thing normally. The fire tender on our left-hand side, and we overtook it because we can't so fast. And we landed and we bounced back up, you know. We could have got the fire tender underneath us with a bounce. And we just had to let it drift back down to earth, which it did.
There was a great feel of joy and elation in our aircraft amongst the crew.
Yes, at last! The people in the cell and myself, we just heaved this huge sigh of relief.
That's a stunner, mate.
I sort of started laughing, you know, like a nervous laugh. I can remember saying, what an epic, Vic, that was a stunner, wasn't it, you know?
God. Oh, boy.
The very first thing I did was to unscrew the fuel cap and look in the fuel tank. I couldn't see any fuel at all. He came over and met us and sort of congratulated us.
How you doing? All right. That was a bit of a close one.
Two of them had wetsuits on, or dry suits. I can remember saying, where you off to then, dressed like that, you know?
Yeah.
And they said they were going to dump us in the Bristol Channel at one time. So he said, we're glad you didn't do that anyway.
Have you fancy a cup of tea then?
I'll fancy something a bit stronger.
Go on.
Not too bad. I'll fly out. You fly back.
Okay, you buy the chips.
Same story in my life.
I was a policeman for 26 years. So I've been involved in a lot of incidents, hostage situations, knife situations. I've been involved in quite a few firearm situations. But I have to say that on balance, this is probably the worst thing I've been involved in.
Fancy a spin? Right seatbelts on as UK TV People enters Jeremy Clarkson's Motor World.